Ladies and gentlemen, we are live and a little bit of news breaking at this hour. It turns out ABC is about to get some, rather discouraging information courtesy of Donald Trump. We're going to have it here first. Welcome to the program, everyone. I am Trish Regan. Yes, you can see we're on the road. We're on the road. You know, I've been going around the world looking at inflation everywhere, and I still got to tell you, as much as they want you to think we're the prettiest girl at the dance in a room not so full of lookers, I got news for you. There's a heck of a wide world out there where inflation is a heck of a lot better than the United States of America. We did get news on inflation today. A quick shout out to my other company, 76 Research, 76research.com. Go check it out, everyone. Code word dollar. Remember that code word dollar if you want to understand how to invest in this inflationary environment. Look, we did get news on the inflation front today. The market's up because of it, but I have more to say on that coming up. But first, to the news of the day. Guess what? ABC News. Not only are you going to get sold off from Disney pretty soon, which means The View is going to be without a home, and I suspect not a show anymore. Well, the big news is that big debate that you were so looking forward to, ladies and gentlemen. You know, that one that you thought you could really rake in the ad revenue on? Well, guess what? That is not happening. It's not going to happen, at least not in its current form, because Donald Trump has kind of figured out that ABC News maybe not really is on his side so very much. I mean, don't forget, he's suing George Stephanopoulos. He's suing the host of this big show. Poor Georgie Pants is going to have to deal with that. The judge is not dismissing Trump's case. It's a defamation lawsuit related to all this stormy stuff that we don't have to get into, but related to that. And so Donald Trump sued not only ABC News, but also George Stephanopoulos. The reason this is kind of a big deal, hey, maybe we can actually see the judge's statement there. You can see that it's moving forward. It's moving forward no matter what. There you go. If you read the screen, it says ordered and adjudged that defendants, American Broadcasting Company, ABC News, and George Stephanopoulos' motion to dismiss, denied. Judge out of Miami, Florida. What do you know? Well, they were supposed to have this debate, you see, and he was going into some kind of hostile territory, which you might say, maybe that's not the smartest thing to do. Well, now, not only is he supposed to be going into hostile territory, he's going in with a whole new candidate, a candidate that, frankly, the American Democrat Party didn't actually really even pick. I mean, we think they're going to go with her after all. I mean, when Mr. and Mrs. Obama sign off on the whole thing, you know, that means it's pretty much fait accompli. A reminder, everybody, subscribe to the show, subscribe to the platform, subscribe here on YouTube, hit the bell so you know when I'm live. I'm live every day here, no matter what, at least Monday through Friday with a few things in between, because this is a big deal and we're on the front lines of history and I'm here with you, vacation or not. So back to ABC for a second. I don't know why he would do this debate, frankly, and neither does he. So already his sources were leaking some information out, and then just moments ago, this is what was just released. Let me share with you the statement. This is from the Vance campaign. Trump campaign statement on the general election debates. I read, and quote, given the continued political chaos surrounding crooked Joe Biden and the Democrat Party, general election debate details cannot be finalized until Democrats formally decide on their nominee. There is a strong sense by many in the Democrat Party, namely Barack Hussein Obama, that Kamala Harris is a Marxist fraud who cannot beat President Trump, and they are still holding out for someone better. Therefore, it would be inappropriate to schedule things with Harris because Democrats very well could still change their minds. I mean, look, it's a clever thing to say, and her father was actually a sort of quasi-Marxist economics professor, so who knows what kind of theories she was raised in or around. I actually don't think he was around that much. I think she was primarily raised by her mother, who was some kind of a sociologist type. So that tells you a fair amount about Kamala Harris. The other thing that you should know is this whole idea of Mamala and her being so feminine, that doesn't really gel. It doesn't really gel with a lot of the population. We're going to get to that in a second because people are getting kind of angry about J.D. Vance for saying something that may have been a bit taken out of context, but nonetheless is somewhat true. We've got a country run by cat ladies. We're going to get to that in a second, but first, I don't think he's going to do this debate, certainly not as it currently stands. One of the things he's floating, Donald Trump is floating, is the possibility of going over to Fox News and doing the debate there. Well, my advice, definitely don't do that. And the reason I wouldn't do that is because I think Fox News feels very strongly that it has to prove to the world that it is not on Donald Trump's side. And so in some ways, they're going to be more biased against him, most deliberately so. I mean, I don't really know as they love him anyway. Let's, be honest here, and we're just realists about it. So if they don't really love him anyway, and they're out to prove a point to all the people that might be tuning in, we're very anti-Trump. Don't forget, they did that in 2020, right? There was sort of a mandate that went down. Let's prove how we're not just in the tank for Donald Trump, and they tried to take him down. It didn't work. So you might actually run into a more friction-prone scenario if you were to go with Fox News. I mean, my advice: come over here to the streaming side. By the way, I've moderated 2 presidential debates myself, 2 GOP presidential debates. And I think that you can find a lot of fair players over here that aren't tied to a network per se, right? Think about that. Why do you have to go with one of the big 3 when all the action, the real action and the truth is actually happening on these streaming platforms? So my recommendation is to cast a wider net. But if you're really going to go with a network, there are better ones than, say, Fox, which has an agenda of its own that it needs to prove. My advice, take it or leave it, Donald Trump, but I tend to be right on a lot of these things, Just saying. All right, so do you believe at all that there was any truth to that little phone call that happened earlier? The one where Kamala gets a call from mommy and daddy. Mr. and Mrs. Obama making the call. Oh, honey, we are so proud of you. So proud of you. The whole thing was supposed to be impromptu. Of course, there just happened to be cameras. There happened to be sort of a repetition of lines from the 2 of them. It was really nauseating. But let's take a listen, and we can all kind of on our own. By the way, her campaign colors, vomit green and black. Vomit green, seriously. That's Kamala headquarter campaign. So it kind of gels with how one wants to feel after hearing this call. Take a peek.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi. You're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Brock, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the 2 of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. Means so much, and we're gonna have some fun with this too, aren't we?
Okay, what do you think? I want to know in the chat. This is a live show, by the way. We are live, so let me know. I'm asking you, and if you're watching after it's live, let me know below. Do you think that was staged? I'm going to tell you my little knowledge of TV, a lot of knowledge of TV, that was totally staged. It was totally, completely staged. I mean, there's different camera angles, and then you heard them repeat each other. We're so proud of you. And then the other one says, we're so proud of you. Come on. She was handpicked from the beginning. In fact, the whole Michelle might run thing, I think there was a bit of a decoy, shall we say, ladies and gentlemen, just to kind of distract you along the way. Because you see, he handpicked her from the very beginning. Think about it. How on earth is this woman our vice president? Think about what she did. I played you the clip in yesterday's show. Go back and watch it if you want to see it, just exactly how she sliced and diced him up one side and down the other. Kamala Harris to Joe Biden in the 2020 debate, accusing him of being a racist. She tried to take him out, and yet what did he do? He actually brought her in. I mean, talking about, the devil amongst us. He brought her in as vice president. Why would he do that? He didn't trust her. He didn't like her. Dr. Jill couldn't stand her. So they said. And so why would you bring her in unless Barack Obama told you you had to? You had to. And perhaps he was hoping that something might happen. Something might happen on the way to the forum as far as Joe Biden goes. But he made it. He stayed alive. He's still there. He's still alive and kicking. And then he actually had the audacity to say, I'm going to run another term. And he ran, and they couldn't do anything about it. So what did they do? They convinced him to go into that debate, which you and I know was kind of a kamikaze mission on steroids, given that he can't string a thought or sentence together for a solid 2 minutes. And the rest is history. So the poor guy gets taken down, even though everyday American voters, Democrats, went to the polls and actually voted for him. Remember, you weren't allowed to actually say that he was deteriorating. That was just crazy fake news somehow. If you dared to say anything like that, cheap fake, to be specific, that was Karine Jean-Pierre's terminology for it when we actually showed you the raw footage of him challenged, right? We'll go with that, challenged. So granted, you know what, he doesn't deserve to be in that space right now. He probably shouldn't be in that space right now, but it's nonetheless who the American people selected. That's who the Democrat Party selected, and now they're taking it away from him. And in comes Kamala, complete with the blessing of the almighty Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle. So they think they can get this thing done. I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm really, really not so sure. I think that Donald Trump is going to be a very tough candidate to beat. Let's take a look at the polls, though. Some of them are very tight. There's a New York Times aggregate of polls, right, where they're looking at all the polls out there. And this one shows you, heck, it is one tight race. And, you know, I mean, hey, what do they say? You know, a day's an eternity in politics, but you're looking at 47 to 46%. Donald Trump a point ahead. And then there are some outliers. So I want to share with you this particular poll that I was really struck by. We talked about this yesterday. In fact, this poll shows, wow, Trump's way ahead. Way, way, way ahead. This is a new Quinnipiac poll, and it has Donald Trump at 58% versus Harris at 39%. I tend to see that this one probably has some merit. I mean, this is the youth group. I should point that out as well. So this is 18 to 34. In other words, the kids don't like her. I mean, why would you? Why would you? Really? I mean, there's nothing hip about her. We saw her dancing at the White House, by the way. So yeah, nothing hip. And I realized she's trying to go with this whole brat thing. And you're saying, what is brat? I mean, I didn't know what was brat. A lot of kids I know don't even know what is brat. That's suddenly the new term that everybody's using. Apparently it means you're one big hot mess. You just keep screwing up, but you own your screw ups. Well, thank you very much. I don't really want a president who's a screw up or a hot mess and proud of it. No, thank you. And I certainly don't want a president whose colors, instead of red, white, and blue, happen to be vomit green and black. But it just reminds you, every time you see Kamala, you might feel like vomiting. And it's not just the colors, it really is her. So Kamala Harris really tight in the polls, but when it comes to the young people, she's struggling. So they have another kind of move that they're trying out. This one is to make Donald Trump and J.D. Vance look like they're the bad guys. They're the bros that don't really understand women, certainly young women. And they're going back to this one little clip that J.D. Vance has when he did an interview with Tucker Carlson, and they were talking about the problem with so many single women in politics running the show, that these women, especially when it comes to some of these cultural issues, don't have a real sensitivity, empathy, and appreciation for what young children go through and what families go through because, hate to state the obvious, they don't have any kids themselves. Listen, we'll react.
Saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
Now, I do believe Mayor Pete, who got upgraded to a transportation secretary, even though, we get planes falling out of the sky. I do believe he has since had a child, so we can't call him childless. But Kamala Harris herself, she has a stepdaughter, which she got just a few years ago because she was relatively recently married, I think back in 2016 or something. Here's what I'm just going to say, all right? Look, I realize, the cat lady thing doesn't go over well with a certain contingency, especially single women that have cats, right? Like, I realize it, I get it. But, you need to make choices in life. And for whatever reason, and my generation is part of this, we were told, oh, you know what? You can do anything. You can have kids whenever you want. You can freeze your eggs, this, that, or the other. You don't have to get married. You should focus on your career. And I think there's something just sort of fundamentally wrong with that. The reason I'm going to say this is because I think that the most important thing you can do in life is meet somebody that you're going to fall in love with and have a relationship with that person that's meaningful and have children with that person. That is so far above and beyond anything, I'm going to get emotional, anything that work is ever going to offer, okay? Like that should be everyone's goal, men and women, to meet the right person, because if you get that right, you know what? The rest of life is a home run. If you can meet the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and you love that person and he loves you, then the rest is just gravy, right? Work, all this other stuff. But like that's the hard part. And they try and make it look like it's easy and it's just, an option that you check off on the box. Thank you very much. I'll get the husband, but I got to focus on my career. And I think that's really fundamentally wrong. I know when I was in my early 20s, I lived in New York City, and I knew a lot of single women with cats. There was like a type. They were like 30-something, single with cats, and they were all kind of unhappy. I mean, it's a huge generalization. I get it. And I say this with sensitivity and with empathy. I knew when I was in my early 20s, I didn't want to be one of them. I really didn't. And I actually remember being very aware, keenly aware, of how important it was for me to meet the right person, because I knew I wanted a career. I knew I wanted to do a lot of things, but I also knew I didn't want to do it alone. Nobody should want to have to go through all this alone. And yet the Democrat Party has pushed this ideology, like you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. You have kids later and meet your husband later. Well, you know what? Meeting your husband good's kind of a nice thing, right? You grow together. You have opportunities to experience life together, and kids are part of that. And I think that it comes with a certain kind of sensitivity. I get kids knocking on my door literally as we speak. Guys, give me a minute as I talk about all this. We're in Italy, so I gave them 15 euros and said, go get some gelato and come back. Anyway, the point being that kids are a great, great part of life. And I think that it gives you more perspective on everything. I mean, when I look at economic policy, when I look at national security, when I look at all of these things, I look at it through the lens of being a mom. And I think that there's an advantage with that. Anyway, they're piling on JD. How dare you say this? And single women everywhere, they're so mad. And oh my gosh, I think Taylor Swift might even be upset, or they're trying to get her upset. Listen to the ladies over there on CNN talking about this whole issue. I think we do. I think this is Liz Plank. Do we see that? Drew and I are talking in real time. He's got it. Okay, let's watch.
This stretched beyond just hearing from Dem surrogates and people for the vice president to, Jennifer Aniston doesn't often, from what I've seen, get involved in politics. And even she was responding today.
Yeah, this was very personal for a lot of women. It was very personal for Jennifer Aniston. And let's be clear, right? You do not have to give birth to biological children in order to have value. And if anyone's unclear about that, we should just ask any president we've ever had, right? We don't question the contribution of men in our society because they don't give birth. And so we shouldn't be doing that for women either. And speaking of childless cat ladies, it's kind of, obviously this comment was from 2 years ago, but it's there's a lot of them doing great things in the world. I think about Taylor Swift, who carried, single-handedly the U.S. economy on her back last summer, made $5 billion for the U.S. economy in less than 5 months, helped stimulate local economies. And so, yeah, American women come in all shapes and sizes. They come from all kinds of different family configurations. So for J.D. Vance to denigrate an entire group of women based on an arbitrary skill that he doesn't even have is really embarrassing. And it's not embarrassing for women, it's embarrassing for him.
Well, and
you hear that? Okay, I hate to break it to you, lady, but the size of the U.S. economy isn't going to survive on Taylor Swift's $5 billion alone. But think about the logic there. They're trying to say, like, she's so great, she's so awesome because she made all this money. That's the thing. How messed up are your values when that's what you're valuing over family and love? I mean, it's like the Snow White thing. Remember when Snow White, we played to that clip, the now defunct live Snow White that they were going to do, and the actress was like, oh, maybe she, has a guy in her life, maybe she doesn't, because, she's not all about falling in love and meeting Prince Charming. And it's like, hey, what's wrong with falling in love? So I just have to take this back for a minute and say No, I mean, I actually feel bad for people that have not met someone. I think that's the hardest thing to do in life. I mean that. Like, that is the hardest thing. If you get that right, everything else is a layup. But you got to meet somebody that you can enjoy being with and have a family with and grow with, man or woman, okay? This is a universal thing. And if you don't want that, you know, if you say career, 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 I think you lose out on something. And I do think that JD is onto something when he's like, okay, these people are making these decisions and they've never had to experience what it's like having a child that's going through a challenging time, that's going through those teen and tween years where they're trying to find themselves, and all of a sudden you got schools and the government forcing this, that, and the other on them. No, parents are a good thing, okay? Like, we've been there, done that, and we have a perspective on life that is valuable in politics. So this is where they're going, right? They're trying to exploit basically, oh, JD, he's bad, Trump is bad, women won't like him, blah, blah, young people. Okay, let's all galvanize around Kamala Harris. Isn't she our hero? Let me tell you, I certainly wouldn't want to grow up to be Kamala Harris, even if she becomes the president of the United States. Would you? Do you want your daughter to grow up to become Kamala Harris? I don't think so. I don't think that's what we aspire to. There's a lot going on overseas. I am overseas right now. I want to look at these inflation numbers, which whoever comes into office is going to have to deal with. You saw that we're still up 2.5%. And everybody's doing a victory lap. And you know what? That's good. It's good because the Fed shoots for 2 to 2.5%. If you grow much more than that, like say 9% and change, like we grew 15 months into the, I almost said Obama administration. You see, that's a Freudian slip, into the Biden-Harris administration. Well, then you're going to have problems. And then they were growing 6% and 5%, and none of that's good. You want to be in this 2 to 2% range. And so the market's welcoming this because the hope is, okay, if we can get into this 2 to 2.5% range, then that's a little bit manageable. But the reality is we were so out of control. I mean, I'm in Italy right now. I'm joking about the 15 euros I gave to the kids. I don't think they're going to need it all. I just want to make sure that they're equipped when they leave the hotel room. I actually am just blown away by the prices here. We went out and had some cappuccino, and we had some little pizza, and we had a gelato just yesterday. And guess how much this cost? In a nice neighborhood, in a nice little cafe, with somebody bringing this over to us on nice plates, not paper plates. The whole thing, 6 euros. So basically $6. I'm like, wait, can I just move here for the summer? I'll save money. I really will save money. I've noticed the same thing in Ireland. I've noticed the same thing even in the UK. So I know this administration sits there and says, oh, you know what? We're dealing with inflation all over the world, and we're actually dealing with it better than most. I don't know as we are. I'm perfectly honest. I don't know as we are, because I think things are looking pretty good here. Hotels can be a little more expensive. Transportation is more expensive. Car services, taxis, boats, all of that. You know, they have boat taxis and that kind of thing, depending on where you are. That's expensive, but that's in part because of the cost of fuel. But food? We haven't seen the inflation, the food inflation, like you see in the US of A. So that's kind of a big deal. I do think that we're a little out over our skis, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, when you try and pretend like food inflation really isn't anything, right? It's not us, it's you. They try and say, it's you. Why do you feel this inflation? The economy is doing just great. No, the economy is not doing great. And we do have a lot of inflation in the US. And so suddenly I'm over here and it feels almost like going back in time. If it's $1.20 for a nice cappuccino that's brought to you at your table, and that includes the tip on top of it. I mean, that's like a different moment in time, don't you think? My daughter said to me, gosh, that would be $7 where we live. Sure, plus tip. And you would only get a paper cup, trust me. So I think that the inflation thing is something that they're going to continue to have to grapple with, whether it's Kamala Harris, whether it's Trump. If you're concerned about inflation, I'm going to tell you this, guys. Make sure you're investing, all right? That's the one piece of advice I have. Make sure that you do it once a week. I always go in once a week. I try and pick days when the market is down, but I always go in once a week. And I try and diversify my holdings. I actually have some very specific holdings that I like, in part because of my business there at 76 Research. I encourage you to go check it out, 76research.com. Rob Horton is my partner. They're a brilliant, brilliant investor. He's been on Wall Street more than 20 years, around billions of dollars, and he's been picking stocks for a very long time, and he's an outstanding stock picker. We have 3 portfolios. You can get all 3, plus the 76 report, if you go in as a Founders Club member. But if you just want to get your feet wet, you just want to check it out, say the 76 report itself, go to 76report.com or 76research.com and use code DOLLAR, DOLLAR, for the US dollar, US dollar, just code dollar. Go in, you can get it for $1 a month for the first 2 months, and it's like $9.95 after. If you want to add in a model portfolio, I think they're about $23 in addition after that. But do check it out because it's really important to be investing right now. I cannot stress that enough. I am in Europe and we've got the Olympics coming up. This is kind of weird what's going on, right? Have you been following this news? Let's go to the Wall Street Journal headline. So there's been quite a little you-know-what storm going on in Paris. Apparently you can't get anywhere on the trains you see because they're all down. There was an arson. There was a fire that actually caused all of these trains to go into disarray, and they've stranded nearly 1 million travelers. So there's a lot of people in Paris right now for the Paris Olympics. Of course, the opening ceremonies are happening. Russia was excluded, so a lot of finger pointing going, Russia, Russia, Russia. I mean, is it Russia? We don't know. Look, we really don't know, but that seems like the obvious choice. Sometimes I would say, don't go with the obvious choice. Like sometimes you should think about this on different levels, but a lot of finger pointing right now at Russia. I think they're going to have to do a big investigation to figure out just exactly what it is. But as all this is happening, of course, in Paris, I want you to take a look at what's going on in the Arctic over by Alaska, which, remember, Sarah Palin told you is quite close to Russia. The U.S. has intercepted some Russian and Chinese bombers on a first joint mission off Alaska. So this is not good news, okay? This is not good news. For whatever reason, we have just driven Russia right into the arms of the Chinese, which is not a good thing. Again, I go back to this team really not knowing well, I was going to say something kind of indiscreet, but I won't. All right, so they don't know what they're doing. Let's just leave it at that. You get a Secretary of State who has been wrong on everything. Like, he's got a great education, went to Harvard, the whole 9 yards, right? He's wrong on everything, and historically has been wrong. And this is Joe Biden's advisor throughout his entire career. He was the Deputy Secretary of State under Barack Obama. McCain was actually pretty worried about it. McCain actually sat there on the floor back in 2014 and said, I can't vote for this guy. I can't approve for this guy to be the Deputy Secretary of State because he will get young American men and women killed. He is that wrong on everything. So it's not that he's not necessarily smart. It's just that he's always wrong. So it's a George Costanza type of thing. You know, if Antony Blinken says do this, make sure you do the other, except we don't, right? Because we got a ragtag team running the show. And so we've made all of these mistakes one after another and somehow have now pushed China and Russia closer and closer and closer together. Does that make any sense? Answer me that in the questions here as we are in this live show. Does that make any sense at all? I would say absolutely not. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be far more strategic about all of this. And yet, over and over again, we've made mistakes. We've got mistakes going on down in South America. For whatever reason, the place is crawling with Russians and Chinese all over Venezuela right now, Iranians too. And I say, why? Like, why? This is our hemisphere. It's the Western hemisphere. Don't we have that Monroe Doctrine? Oh, oopsie. Wasn't Kamala Harris in charge of all that? Kamala Harris, who was our border czar? Yes, I used the word czar. And I'm right to use the word czar, even though she's desperately trying to back away from it. We have it on record. I showed you yesterday. We're going to do a clip of that too over the weekend. So stay tuned. You got to watch it because all of the media referred to her quite proudly as the border czar. And now what are they telling you? Gaslighting again. They're saying, no. She was never the border czar. But she was. She was, and that's what they called her. And that's just the truth, okay? So she did a terrible job as the border czar. We're now dealing with immigration levels unlike anything we have ever seen. And consequently, I think you have some real national security risks, given that Russia and China and the Iranians are all hanging out just down south of the border. That's kind of a problem. And I put that right back on this administration. So do you want a continuation of this administration's bad policies? I think not. I think not. I think we need to send the Obamas back to Martha's Vineyard and maybe Kamala can be so lucky as to get a great speaking tour, and she can then buy a house there too. And they can all hang out together and contemplate where they went wrong, because they went really wrong. And it's time that we get our country back. Please do me the favor of subscribing to this. I'm going to continue posting. Like I said, I got to go get gelato, or the kids might have some for me right about now. And I'm going to continue being here for you throughout all of this, continuing to report even on all the inflation that we're seeing, or lack of, I should say. People here keep telling me they're suffering with inflation. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Well, wait a second. You ain't seen nothing yet, right? Not until you get back to the good old New York City metropolitan area. That's something to write home about. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you on Monday and throughout the weekend.